the sword that held a nation's soul. In the quiet glow of a forge, a blade is born, not merely from metal and flame, but from ritual, belief, and centuries of refinement. The katana is more than a weapon. For the samurai of feudal Japan, it was identity, soul, and sacred trust. Its curve wasn't designed in haste. Its creation wasn't mechanical. It was a rite, a fusion of metallurgy and mysticism. But how exactly was the katana forged? And why was it held in such reverence, elevated beyond the battlefield into the realm of legend? This is not a tale of fantasy, but of painstaking craftsmanship and cultural devotion. Each katana passed through fire, fold, and form, infused with the spirit of its maker and the code of the warrior who would wield it. From mountain sand to gleaming blade, we'll uncover the secrets of how it was made and why it mattered. Forging a katana wasn't a solitary act. It involved entire lineages. Swordsmiths studied under masters for decades. Their skills passed through generations. Some schools of sword making, such as the Bison or Soshu traditions, developed unique forging styles that influenced samurai identity across regions. These blades weren't churned out. They were commissioned, named, and often designed with specific warriors in mind. Samurai would even visit swordsmiths in person, praying at their forges and requesting blades tailored to their fighting style or rank. And while the katana is famous today for its beauty, it was forged during some of Japan's most turbulent centuries. Warring clans, shifting loyalties, and waves of civil conflict meant these swords were truly tools of survival, not just ceremony. Let's step into that world, the sacred heat of the forge, the silence of the shrine, and the soul that lies between steel and spirit. The birth of steel, tamahagane, and sacred iron sand. The katana story begins not with steel, but with sand. In the mountainous regions of Japan, smiths sought out a dark, shimmering material called satetsu, iron sand. This wasn't just any ore. Japanese iron sand, particularly the mesa variety, was unusually pure and low in sulfur and phosphorus, making it ideal for sword making. Villagers and smiths alike would collect this sand by hand, often using wooden sluice boxes and sieves along riverbanks during winter when the water ran clearer. The satetsu was then brought to the tatara, a traditional clay furnace standing over 4 feet tall. Operated by a master called a mirage, the tatara burned for 3 straight days and nights. Charcoal was constantly added, creating temperatures above 1,200 degrees Celsius. The fire consumed massive resources, over a ton of charcoal per run. Inside the tatara, the satetsu didn't melt. Instead, it transformed into a bloom-like mass known as kira. This mixture of steel and slag was broken open at the end of the firing, revealing chunks of tamahagane, the highest quality pieces, glittering with a crystalline sheen. Selecting tamahagane was both art and instinct. Swordsmiths tapped each piece, listening for clarity in the ring, checking for textures that hinted at proper carbon balance. These chosen fragments held the potential for a blade of strength and grace. The rest was either repurposed or discarded. Importantly, the tatara wasn't just an oven. It was sacred. Offerings were often made before a firing, rice, salt, sake, to purify the space and honor the elements. The Mirage and his assistants saw themselves as conduits between earth and fire, transforming the mundane into the sublime. This stage was foundational. If the tamahagane was flawed, the blade would suffer. The katana's spirit may have been forged in fire, but its seed was carried in sand, gathered by calloused hands under the winter sky. Fire and fold, the ritual of repetition. With tamahagane chosen, the raw material began its painful transformation. The swordsmith, or katana kaji, started by breaking the steel into manageable chunks, layering them carefully. These were then wrapped in paper, dipped in clay slurry, and brought to an intense heat within the forge. The first hammer strike fused them into a billet. The folding would begin. Known as orikeshi tanren, this folding process was far more than aesthetic. Each fold refined the grain of the steel, drove out trapped impurities, and homogenized the carbon content. After every cycle, the billet was reheated, elongated, and folded again. Some blades underwent 10 to 15 folds, resulting in thousands of microscopic layers. Too much folding, however, was dangerous. Excessive folds could dilute the carbon and weaken the steel. Smiths had to balance precision and restraint, reading the metal like a living thing, watching how it bent, listening to how it rang beneath the hammer. Interestingly, smiths didn't use just one kind of tamahagane. They often combined harder, high-carbon steel for the cutting edge with softer, low-carbon steel for the spine, layering them for strength and flexibility. This stage also created the blade's hada, a wood grain-like surface pattern. Invisible during forging, it would later be revealed through polishing. Some patterns resembled flowing rivers, others pine bark or mist. These weren't random. They reflected the smith's style, school, and mastery. The act of hammering became rhythmic, almost meditative. Apprentice smiths kept the bellows breathing, feeding the flames. A master might work from dawn until dusk, knowing one lapse in timing could fracture the steel. This wasn't just labor, it was devotion. A blade folded with care would hold not only strength, but spirit. Its final test awaited in the water. The smith as priest, forging as a spiritual practice. Swordsmiths in Japan weren't simply artisans, they were seen as priest-like figures, guardians of ritual, spirit, and tradition. Before forging even began, purification was standard. The forge and workspace were swept clean, salt was sprinkled to drive away impurity, and the smith would often bathe and dress in white robes, invoking Shinto ritual. In many dojos, a kamidana, a small Shinto altar, stood above the forge. Offerings of rice, sake, and water were made to the kami, or spirits, asking for protection and guidance. The katana, it was believed, could house spiritual energy. Some swords were said to possess their own temperaments, some loyal, others wild. A poorly made blade could not only fail in battle, but dishonor its wielder or bring misfortune. As such, forging was not approached casually. It demanded purity of mind and heart. Each swing of the hammer was intentional. Some schools chanted sutras or specific rhythmic phrases, timing them with the strikes. The flames, the anvil, the bellows, all were treated with reverence. The forge was not merely hot, it was holy. The swordsmith didn't work alone. He was often assisted by apprentices or family members, many of whom would dedicate their lives to learning the family's secret techniques. These techniques, some involving clay formulas, folding ratios, or precise temperature changes, were rarely written down. They were passed orally, generation to generation, safeguarded like sacred scripture. Even during the tempering and polishing stages, silence was observed. Some believed this allowed the blade's voice to emerge, letting the steel speak through its pattern and balance. When the smith finally examined the blade under natural light, it wasn't just technical, it was contemplative. The blade now formed had absorbed more than heat and hammering. It had absorbed memory, breath, belief. In a nation where nature and spirit are one, this union of fire and prayer made the katana not just sharp, but sacred. Blade of balance, hard edge, soft spine. The katana's defining quality lies in its perfect balance between strength and suppleness, precision and power. This paradox was achieved through a process called yaki-aya, or differential hardening, which gave the blade its iconic curve and its soul-splitting sharpness. After the final shaping, the smith applied a layer of specially formulated clay to the blade. This was no random coating. A thin layer was spread along the edge, while the spine was covered in a thicker coat. Each smith had their own secret mixture, usually a blend of clay, charcoal, powdered whetstone, and ash, adjusted for humidity, steel type, and season. The blade was then heated until it glowed a dull orange, carefully monitored in a darkened forge. At the exact moment, it was plunged into water. The thinly coated edge cooled rapidly, transforming into martensite, a glass-hard, crystalline structure. The spine, insulated by thicker clay, cooled slower, forming perlite, softer and more ductile. This difference in cooling caused internal tension, and the blade curved as a result. This curve wasn't hammered into shape. It emerged naturally, born from the collision of physics and spirit. The visible result was the hamon, the glowing, cloud-like line running along the blade's edge. Beyond its beauty, the hamon marked the transition between soft and hard steel, a boundary between killing force and enduring structure. Each hamon was unique, shaped by the clay's pattern and the smith's touch. Some were straight like a monk's staff, others wavy like drifting fog. All were unmistakable signs of a real blade. But this process was dangerous. Misjudged timing or temperature could crack the blade instantly. Many swords shattered during quenching, ending days or weeks of labor. When a blade survived, it wasn't just a tool, it was a survivor. The katana's dual nature became metaphor. The edge represented lethal force, the spine, control, and compassion. Together, they mirrored the ideal samurai, a warrior of restraint, not rage, and all of it, encoded in steel, was made possible by mastering the art of controlled contradiction. Polishing to perfection, art beyond the forge. When the quenching was complete, the blade passed into the hands of a new master, the togishi, the traditional sword polisher. His task was not to decorate the blade, but to reveal it. Polishing a katana was a sacred process in its own right, taking anywhere from 2 weeks to a full month. Using a progression of increasingly fine natural whetstones, some so rare they were passed down like heirlooms, the togishi would slowly uncover the blade's full character. The first stage, shitaji togi, involved removing the outer scale and shaping the blade's geometry with rough stones. This required incredible precision. One wrong angle could erase the crispness of the ridgeline, warp the blade's profile, or obscure the hamon. Polishing was always done by hand, often while seated in Caesar on the floor, using slow, rhythmic strokes. Next came shiage-togi, or the finishing polish. Here, the togishi used fine-grade stones to refine the surface and bring out the hada and hamon, the grain and temper line that told the blade's story. The blade was often examined in natural light, held at different angles to inspect how the steel caught and reflected the sun. Polishing didn't just expose beauty, it revealed flaws. A hidden crack, uneven tempering, or asymmetry might only become visible under the togishi's gaze. In that sense, the togishi was a judge as much as an artist. His polish determined whether a blade passed from good to great or from tool to treasure. Some polishers were known to meditate before beginning their work. Others saw the act as a collaboration with the original smith, a final gesture of reverence. There was also a belief that blades which had taken lives should be polished with solemnity to honor the dead. When complete, the blade gleamed not like chrome, but with a soft, luminous glow, what connoisseurs call cyanuri polish. The hamon danced along the edge. The hada shimmered like ripples in water. The katana had reached its final form, not through fire, but through quiet revelation. The katana as soul, samurai beliefs, and bushido. In the mind of a samurai, the katana was not a possession. It was a reflection. More than armor, more than banners, it was the blade that defined a warrior's soul. A samurai's katana was treated with the same reverence a monk might give a sacred scroll. It was worn every day, often paired with a shorter blade called a wakizashi, forming the daisho, the long and short symbol of rank and duty. From childhood, samurai were taught to draw the blade with intention. It wasn't to be unsheathed for show. Doing so, even accidentally, could be seen as a threat. Many carried their blades sheathed in silk or lacquered wood, not for vanity, but to protect its honor. A chipped blade reflected poorly on the soul that wielded it. In spiritual terms, the katana was believed to house part of its owner's ki, a life force or energy field. If a warrior died honorably, it was said his spirit could remain in the blade. Some swords were passed down through generations, gaining names, reputations, even myths. These weren't antiques, they were ancestors in steel. Bushido, the way of the warrior, guided this bond. It demanded loyalty, self-discipline, and above all, integrity. To use a katana unjustly was to defile it. Some samurai would commit seppuku, ritual suicide, using their short blade to atone for lost honor. The sword wasn't the agent of death, it was the vehicle of truth. Swordmasters often spoke of becoming one with the blade. In battle, the goal wasn't just to strike, but to merge action with intuition. This ideal echoed Zen philosophy, where the separation between thought and movement disappears. In a moment of perfect clarity, the sword moved before the mind did. Samurai also believed that the katana demanded attention. It needed oiling, polishing, and respect. Leaving it unattended was believed to bring misfortune. This wasn't superstition, it was stewardship. In the end, the katana wasn't just a weapon, it was a code, a companion, and a compass, always pointing its wielder toward honor. Myth, blood, and ceremony. The sword in life and death. The katana was forged for battle, but it lived far beyond the battlefield. In ancient Japan, swords weren't just military tools. They were embedded in myth, lore, and ritual. The imperial regalia of Japan, the three sacred treasures, includes a sword, Kusanagi no Tsurugi, the grass-cutting sword, said to have been found in the body of an 8-headed serpent slain by the god Susanoo. For centuries, this blade, whether real or symbolic, was believed to validate the divine right of the emperor. This reverence filtered into daily life. In samurai households, katanas were displayed in tokonoma alcoves alongside scrolls and incense, signaling balance between art and discipline. During marriage ceremonies among the warrior class, a sword might be presented in lieu of a ring, an emblem of protection and loyalty. Even in civilian settings, the katana commanded deep respect. Sword-drawing schools taught not only combat, but etiquette. There were rules for how to carry it in public, how to bow with it, and even how to rest it beside oneself while seated. To mishandle a blade was to insult not just the smith, but centuries of tradition. During the Sengoku period, When Japan was torn apart by warring clans, the sword's reputation as a killing instrument grew. Some blades were said to have tasted hundreds of lives. These swords developed dark auras, earning nicknames like the Soul Taker or the Thirsty One. But even these were wrapped in ceremony. After battle, many samurai cleaned and re-oiled their blades under moonlight, offering prayers for the fallen. In death, the katana did not leave the warrior. Some were buried with their owners. Others were broken and scattered to signify the end of a bloodline, or to protect the blade from dishonor. It was also common for a wakizashi to be passed down to the eldest son, a silent transfer of legacy. In Shinto shrines, ceremonial swords were often left as offerings to the kami, sometimes not even sharpened, because it wasn't the cutting edge that mattered. It was the symbol. Through war, worship, peace, and passage, the katana transcended its function. It became memory. It became meaning. The blade beyond time. The katana endures, not just in museums or martial arts films, but in the collective memory of a culture that prized balance between body and soul, strength and grace. Each blade was born from ritual and precision, from the cold iron sands of Japan's mountains to the white-hot furnaces tended by priest-like smiths, from folding upon folding, until layers numbered in the thousands, from silent meditations during polishing, where the soul of the blade was slowly revealed. This was not just metalwork, it was soulcraft. Even today, the art survives, barely. Japan's government designates certain mastersmiths as living national treasures. These artisans are allowed to forge a limited number of swords per year, and only under strict guidelines. Their forges are not factories. They are sacred spaces. Every blade they produce is signed, documented, and registered, not as a weapon, but as cultural heritage. Modern collectors may see beauty, practitioners may feel precision, but those who understand the deeper meaning see something else, a time capsule of philosophy, a mirror reflecting Bushido's core values: courage, honor, discipline, and humility. The katana is revered not because it cuts, but because it cuts through illusion, reminding us that the greatest strength lies in restraint, that perfection is achieved not through haste, but through harmony. That fire, when guided by wisdom, can shape not just steel, but spirit. If this journey through steel and silence spoke to you, I invite you to leave a comment below. What part of the katana's story did you find most surprising? Do you have a favorite swordsmith school or samurai legend you'd like to share? If you're new here, subscribe to Japan Rewind for more immersive dives into Japan's hidden past, where weapons tell stories, rituals echo through time, and history comes alive not as myth, but as meaning. And if you found value in this video, please give it a like and share it with others who believe history deserves reverence, not rush. Until next time, walk with honor, speak with precision, and remember, the path to mastery, like the blade itself, is curved, subtle, sacred, and forged in fire.